Episode 5, Tolkien and the Most Improper Job.
I'm rising up with a full heart. I'm taking my strength from inside. I'm rising up with a new mind. I'm taking your words and letting it all behind. I'm coming up from underneath the rain.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I will be discussing Tolkien and something he called the most improper job. But before we begin, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on whatever podcatcher you're using so not to miss any future episodes. And if you're not sure where to find us, visit anarchochristian.com/subscribe. There you'll find links to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Android, Google Play, and YouTube. Now, since the last recording, we had not one, but 2 5-star reviews on iTunes. Debt Boss writes, "Excellent. Great podcast so far and looking forward to more. The episodes are short enough to listen to without having to commit a lot of time out of your day, but long enough to cover the topic in relatable layman's terms. Again, I'm excited to hear more." Thanks, Debt Boss. I appreciate you taking time to leave your thoughts, and I'm excited to record more. From Ecclesia Rob, "We need more content like this. Thank you, Stephen, for articulating what has long gone unsaid in many Christian circles, that not only is there a biblical basis for the argument of no rulers, but that the statist leanings of the Christian church today is a departure from historic understandings of the relationship between man and his neighbor. We need more podcasters, bloggers, speakers, and content creators getting this message out there. God bless you and your podcast. I look forward to seeing this project grow." Thanks, Rob. I couldn't agree more. Not only do I like bringing you new and engaging content, I hope it does inspire other people to produce more of their own as well. In fact, since starting this project, I've had the opportunities to collaborate with many people. Some have contributed their talents to Anarcho-Christian, while others are considering their own projects. And truth be told, it's reviews and comments like yours and Debt Bosses that are going to get us there. So if there's anyone out there considering contributing to Anarcho-Christian or simply want to talk about your own project, drop me a line. But one of the quickest ways to help with our project is by leaving a 5-star rating and review like these. Lastly, I have very exciting news for Anarcho-Christian. This week, we received our first patron on Patreon. Paul has made a monthly pledge to support the podcast. Paul, thank you so much. I am beyond thankful for your pledge and will continue to work to bring you the content that you enjoy. This is a huge boost for the project, as well as motivation for the team behind it. If anyone else is interested in supporting us with a one-time or monthly donation through Patreon, visit the support tab on anarchochristian.com. That will take you to our Patreon page where you will find a few ways to support us. From a one-time donation of any amount or a few monthly levels from $2 a month to the executive producer level. Check out the page to see some of the perks for each of those levels. Everything from a shout out from me to an exclusive shirt. That's right. Swag is coming, y'all. So if you like what we're doing, hit the link and check out the options for support. And again, thank you, Paul, for your financial support. So, on to today's episode, Tolkien and the most improper job. Now, J.R.R. Tolkien is another household name that many do not associate with anarchism. I think he might be a little better known for his faith, but what he's really known for are the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings series, which were already huge before the epic string of movies that started to be released around 2001. The provocative statement that he made was, quote, "My political opinions lean more and more to anarchy." If you've seen that phrase before, you might have also read the lines that generally accompany it. The most improper job of any man, even saints, is bossing other men. Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all, those who seek the opportunity. I really want to jump right into these words, but I think we would be shortchanging them if we didn't talk about the context around them. They are extremely significant, and to see the whole picture, we should really take a look at it. When, why, and to whom they're written, as well as what would lead Tolkien to say such a thing. Of course, I find myself in full agreement with Tolkien, and it was coming across this letter that helped solidify the philosophy for me. First, Tolkien himself. John Tolkien was born January of 1892. He was an author, as we already noted, and a university professor. While he was a professor, he was also a close friend with C.S. Lewis, which we will get further into in the future. They were both in a literary discussion group called the Inklings, where they would meet at a local pub with a few other people and discuss their work and, I'm sure, everything else. Owen Barfield was also a notable member of that group. What I think lends the most context to the letter Tolkien wrote concerning anarchism is that he was a soldier in the First World War. He delayed his enlistment until after he finished his degree. In 1915, he finished school and was sent to France the following year. At 24 years old, he survived one of the bloodiest battles in history, the Battle of the Somme, where more than 3 million people were wounded or killed. It's even said, as Tolkien made mentions of it, that the Battle of the Somme was a large inspiration for Mordor and the battles depicted in The Lord of the Rings. Looking back on World War I, Tolkien said, "One has indeed personally to come under the shadow of war to feel fully its oppression. And by 1918, all but one of my close friends were dead." So, fast forward to 1943, and Tolkien's son, Christopher Tolkien, was drafted into the Royal Air Force to fight in the Second World War. Obviously, the war to end all wars not only failed in living up to its nickname, but led directly to the next horrific World War. During his son's time in the Air Force, they exchanged letters, much of which has been published. A letter in particular laid out some very profound observations from Tolkien on government, anarchism, and the Christian. It starts, "My political opinions lean more and more to anarchy, philosophically understood, meaning abolition of control, not whiskered men with bombs, or to unconstitutional monarchy." In the next few lines, he talks with such great disdain for people that have deified government and state by writing or using the terms of the capital G and S that he would have them executed. He continues, "Anyway, the proper study of a man is anything but man, and the most improper job of any man, even saints, who at any rate were at least unwilling to take it on, is bossing other men. Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all, those who seek the opportunity." The letter goes on to make insightful references to Stalin and Xerxes, and I'll have a link for it in the show notes. But I want to look close at the lines I already singled out. I think it is interesting that he felt the need to specify the true meaning of anarchy from the visual of someone acting violently. Whiskered men with bombs has even become a phrase we use in our own home to cut to the chase when we don't want to continually define the difference. But this is undoubtedly something that must be done over and over again if you want to discuss anarchism. We see it today with the Antifa crowd, bandanas, all black, hooded, and looking to cause violence. But I have so much disdain for the Antifa type, I feel bad even bringing them up as the same men that Tolkien was referencing. And that's not to elevate their violence as somehow allowable or legitimate, but making bombs and blowing up factories or what they saw as institutions of oppression is somewhat more respectable than attacking Starbucks trash cans and defending social justice in the most childish of temper tantrums. Anyways, I recently reread G.K. Chesterton's The Man Who Was Thursday, published in 1908, where the bombing anarchists were the center of the story. I really recommend you read the book because it's very funny in Chesterton's unique way. It's not a very long book, and I hope to get into it sometime for the podcast, but I bring it up now to show that there's always been this image associated with anarchism. And as Tolkien points out, it's not what the term really means. Getting away from the Antifa stylings and getting down to the philosophy behind the image, we would need to get into anarcho-communism. This is something I've brought up before and have a few posts on the website. I'll make sure to have links to them in the show notes as well. But even this wasn't what was behind the violent whiskered men with bombs. The kickoff to World War I was instigated by the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand by ardent nationalists, yet they are commonly portrayed as anarchists. So, in the long 8 degrees of separation, anarchism is always confused with revolutionaries that will use guerrilla-style violence to terrorize and attack the opposition and the current government. The end goal typically being a state of their choosing, which is extremely antithetical to anarchism. As Tolkien said, meaning abolition of control. We see this play out with the infatuation of Guy Fawkes as well, and I guess it doesn't help that groups like this will use the term anarchism, further instilling the misrepresentation. Anyways, I really like what he has to say in that the most improper job of any man, even saints, is bossing other men. This is the heart of the matter. It's the first step in the contradiction of anarcho-communism, but it is also the first step in exposing the issues we see in our current country, from Christians especially. It's very easy for the group in charge to not just write their laws for peace, but to take pleasure in organizing it in such a way as to boss other people into whatever moral code they have. And time again, this gives way to unloving hearts and sadistic motivations. I think this is a primary reason behind Tolkien is expressing that not 1 in a million is fit for it. But, cue the response, we have to have order. We must do this or that to maintain civil society. And it's here that I try to bring 2 things into the conversation. 1, bossing other men in such a way, if wrong, is not a means we can justify. I brought up on the last podcast that was my interview with Liberty Weekly that morals are objective. They do not change because we really want the outcome. I think we tend to look at the world as either first world prosperity or third world poverty. I grew up in a time when those commercials were always on and organizations were looking for donations to feed children in other countries. Now, I'm not knocking feeding the needy in any country. What I am saying is that I think it led to a faulty perspective of us and them and Americans. And Christians are no different from this observation or mindset. We have so much, so we have civility, and they have so little, so they are uncivilized. This perspective lends greatly to justifying atrocities done to Native Americans or any indigenous group that our American exceptionalism took us to. It was the same then as it is now. It dehumanizes other people and cultures. And bringing democracy to backwards people is now justifiable, warranted, and a moral imperative, no matter how many of them we kill. They shouldn't have resisted. I hope all these illustrations are starting to come together. This is the same mindset that justifies bombing civilians in the Middle East and imprisoning people here. They'll say, they should have been one of us, or they shouldn't have resisted, those savages. and this is anything but civilized. Now, civilized just means who is more powerful. And who is more powerful is who has God on their side. Getting back to Tolkien's words, not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all, those who seek the opportunity. I think there is reason for someone to want to look at our current situation and want to run for a public office to flip it, end it, abolish it, fix it, etc. I also find myself completely on the skeptical side. Tolkien's words are not unlike Frank Herbert's. Absolute power does not corrupt absolutely. Absolute power attracts the corruptible. And suspect any who seek it. Of course, he is referencing the other famous line from Lord Acton. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I'll let everyone else split hairs over who is more right. But I think the picture is obvious. I think it was obvious to a young, entrenched Tolkien in France. I think it was further obvious to a Professor Tolkien who wrote to his conscripted son. We see this corruption and power in the ring that is central to Tolkien's stories. Even the most noble creatures Tolkien could imagine were corrupted by that power. It's no different today. As I already stated, and people can argue it, but I think it's obvious. If we honestly take a look at ourselves, our Christian nation, our desire to govern and remake society in our image through force, people are corrupted by power. The ring wasn't a representation of some evil force outside of reality that we can't grasp and whose understanding will never be known as it remains a mysterious antagonist. No, it's power to rule over other men and the evil that inevitably comes from that. So to close things out, I think a quote from Gandalf would be appropriate. I would want to use this ring from a desire to do good, but through me, it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine. Well, I hope you liked this episode on Tolkien and the most improper job. If you did, please like and share on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or iTunes. Leave us a rating or a review and think about supporting us through Patreon. Until next time, grace and peace, no king but Christ.
Thank you for listening to the Anarcho-Christian Podcast. Subscribe to our email notifications at anarchochristian.com, like us on facebook.com/anarchochristian, and follow us on Twitter at anarchoxp. Subscribe to our podcast and YouTube to join us next time as we continue to evaluate the relationship between the Christian and the state. No king but Christ.
This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.